Listen, Mike Tomlin just did something that has the entire NFL world looking sideways at Cleveland right now. And I'm not talking about some throwaway comment in a press conference. I'm talking about a reaction, a visible, undeniable reaction that's got people asking questions the Browns organization probably doesn't want answered. Because when one of the most respected coaches in football hears Shedeur Sanders' name in the context of what's happening in Cleveland, and his face does that, yeah, we need to talk about it. And before anybody comes at me saying I'm reaching or making something out of nothing, let me be clear. I'm not claiming I know what Mike Tomlin was thinking. I'm not saying there's some conspiracy. But what I am saying is that when you watch the clip, and y'all have seen it by now, there's a reaction there that speaks louder than any quote he could have given. The kind of reaction that makes you go, wait, what does he know that we don't? Because here's the thing. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most scrutinized young quarterbacks we've seen in years. The son of Coach Prime, Heisman finalist, national spotlight since high school, went to Cleveland in the draft with expectations sky high. And now? Now we're watching a situation unfold that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Not just fans, not just media, but apparently people inside the league too. And when Mike Tomlin, a coach who's seen everything, who's developed quarterbacks, who understands the politics of this league better than almost anyone, when he reacts the way he did, that tells you something. It tells you that what's happening with Shedeur in Cleveland isn't just unusual, it's uncomfortable. So let's walk through this. Let's talk about what actually happened, what we've seen on the field, what the media is saying, and why Mike Tomlin's reaction has people convinced there's more to this story than the Browns are letting on. Let's start from the draft. Cleveland takes Shedeur Sanders. High pick. Huge investment. The kind of pick you make when you believe this kid is your franchise guy. The kind of pick that comes with pressure, sure, but also comes with a plan. You don't draft a quarterback that high just to throw him into chaos with no support structure. And from everything we heard during the offseason, the Browns were committed to developing him the right way. Reports about him working with the coaches, getting reps in OTAs, building chemistry with receivers, all the normal stuff you expect when a team drafts their future. But then training camp starts, and things get weird. Now, based on what we saw, and I'm saying based on what we saw because I wasn't in that building, I'm watching from the outside like all of y'all, it looked like Shedeur was getting limited first-team reps. And I don't mean he was splitting time evenly with a veteran. I mean it looked like he was running with the 2s and 3s more than you'd expect for a guy drafted to be the future. And the explanation from the coaching staff was always some version of, we're bringing him along slowly, or he's learning the system, or we want to make sure he's ready. Which, okay, fine, that's not unreasonable on the surface. Plenty of rookies sit for a bit. Plenty of teams want their young quarterback to learn before they throw him out there. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The guy getting the first-team reps? A veteran who, let's be real, nobody thought was the long-term answer. A guy who'd bounced around the league. A guy who was clearly a bridge, not a destination. And yet, week after week, he's the one taking the majority of the snaps with the starters. And Shedeur, he's watching. He's waiting. He's doing everything they're asking him to do. And from what people close to the situation were saying, not me, I'm just reacting to what's out there. He was handling it with patience and professionalism. No complaints, no drama, just working. But then the season starts, and it gets even weirder. The veteran struggles. I'm talking bad games, turnovers, missed throws, the kind of performances where fans are screaming for a change. And the natural question becomes, okay, when does Shedeur get his shot? When does the guy you drafted to be the future get a chance to show what he can do? And the answer from the coaching staff? We're sticking with our guy. We believe in the process. Shedeur's not ready yet. Not ready? Based on what? Because from what we could see, again, I'm being careful here, I'm not claiming inside knowledge, it wasn't like Shedeur was struggling in practice. It wasn't like he was making mistakes that justified keeping him on the bench. If anything, the reports that were coming out suggested he was doing well when he got opportunities, that he was sharp, that he understood the offense. So why wasn't he playing? And this is where people started asking uncomfortable questions, because it started to feel less like we're protecting a young quarterback and more like we're avoiding playing a young quarterback. And there's a difference. Protecting a guy means you put him in when the situation is right, when the team around him can support him, when he's had time to develop and prepare. Avoiding a guy means you keep finding reasons not to play him, even when the circumstances suggest he should get a chance. And based on what we were seeing, it was starting to look a lot more like the latter. Now, let's talk about the Mike Tomlin clip, because this is where everything exploded. There's a media session. I'm not going to say exactly when because we're keeping this evergreen, but it was recent. And someone asks Tomlin a question about young quarterbacks in the division. And Shedeur's name comes up in the context of Cleveland's quarterback situation. And y'all, the reaction. He doesn't say anything wild. He doesn't go on some rant. But his face, the look in his eyes, the slight pause before he answers, it's the kind of reaction that tells you he's thinking something he's not going to say out loud. It's the kind of look that says, man, I could tell you stories, but I'm not going to do that on camera. And then he gives this very measured, very careful response about how every organization handles their young quarterbacks differently, and how development timelines vary, and all the diplomatic stuff you'd expect from a coach who knows better than to throw gas on a fire. But it's not what he said. It's how he looked when the question was asked. And people noticed. Oh, people absolutely noticed. The clip went viral. Social media exploded. Browns fans, Shedeur fans, football analysts, random people who don't even follow the NFL that closely. Everybody was talking about it. Because when Mike Tomlin gives you that look in response to a question about a division rival's quarterback situation, it means something. It means he's seen something, heard something, knows something, and whatever it is, it's not good. Now, before we go any further, let me make something clear. This is not about making excuses for anybody. This is about providing context. Because two things can be true at the same time. One, Shedeur Sanders is not a perfect player. He's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have bad games. There are things he needs to work on, just like every young quarterback. Two, what's happening in Cleveland is not a normal development situation. And I'm not saying that to protect Shedeur or to attack the Browns. I'm saying it because it's true. When you draft a quarterback high, the typical plan is sit him for a bit if you have a decent veteran, let him learn, then give him a chance when the timing makes sense. And if he struggles, you support him. You build around him. You give him the tools to succeed. But what we've seen in Cleveland doesn't look like that. It looks like a situation where the organization is hesitant to play him, even when the circumstances suggest they should. Even when the veteran isn't getting it done. Even when the fans are demanding a change. And that raises questions. Not accusations. Questions. Why wouldn't you play the guy you invested a high draft pick in? Why would you keep running out a veteran who's clearly not the answer? What's the actual plan here? And when you can't get clear answers to those questions, people start filling in the blanks. And that's when things get uncomfortable. Let's talk about how the media's handled this. Because once the Tomlin clip hit, it was like somebody opened the floodgates. Analysts who'd been tiptoeing around the Shedeur situation in Cleveland suddenly felt free to say what they'd been thinking. You had people on national shows asking pointed questions about the Browns' handling of their young quarterback. You had former players and coaches weighing in with their opinions. And the common thread? A lot of people seem to think something's off. Now, again, I'm not claiming these people have inside information. I'm not saying they know something definitive. But when multiple people who've been around the league for decades all look at the same situation and come away with the same uncomfortable feeling, that's worth paying attention to. One analyst said something like, "I've seen teams develop young quarterbacks the wrong way before, but this feels different. This feels intentional." Intentional. That's a strong word. Another former coach talked about how organizations sometimes get locked into decisions they know are wrong but don't want to admit. How pride and politics can override what's best for the team. And then you had the players, current and former guys who understand the locker room dynamics, who know what it's like when there's tension between what's happening publicly and what's happening privately. And a lot of them seem to be suggesting that Shedeur's situation in Cleveland isn't just about football, that there's something else going on, something organizational, something cultural. And when you combine all of that with Mike Tomlin's reaction, when you add that visual, undeniable moment to all the other smoke signals we've been seeing, yeah, it's not hard to understand why people are asking questions. Here's what makes this even more complicated. Shedeur Sanders has handled this entire situation with a level of maturity and professionalism that's honestly impressive. Think about what he's dealing with. He's got the legacy pressure of being Coach Prime's son. He's got the media attention that comes with that name. He's got the expectations of being a high draft pick. And on top of all that, he's sitting on the bench watching a veteran struggle while people debate whether he's good enough to play. That's a lot for anybody, let alone a rookie. And from everything we've seen, and I'm being careful here, I'm reacting to what's public, he's kept his head down and worked. No social media outbursts, no anonymous leaks to reporters, no drama. He's shown up, put in the time, done what the coaches asked, and waited. And that takes strength. That takes discipline. Because it would be easy, so easy, to let frustration creep in. To start questioning why you're not playing. To wonder if the organization actually believes in you. To feel like maybe you made a mistake choosing Cleveland. But he hasn't done that. At least not publicly. And that tells you something about his character, about his mental toughness, about his understanding of the long game. But it also makes what's happening even more uncomfortable. Because when you've got a young player doing everything right, handling a difficult situation with grace, and he's still not getting opportunities, what message does that send? What does it say about the organization's commitment to him? What does it say about their plan? And how long can you expect a young quarterback to stay patient when the situation doesn't seem to be improving? Let's talk about what Browns fans are going through right now, because this isn't easy for them either. On one hand, you've got a portion of the fan base that's screaming for Shedeur to play. They see the veterans struggling, they see the losses piling up, they see a wasted season, and they're frustrated because they feel like the team isn't even giving their future quarterback a chance to show what he can do. These are the fans calling into radio shows, posting on social media, showing up to games with signs. They're angry, they're impatient, and they want to see the guy they've been told is the future actually get to play. On the other hand, you've got fans who are more cautious, who remember other young quarterbacks in Cleveland who got thrown in too early and got broken, who want to make sure Shedeur is actually ready before he plays, who trust the coaches to know better than the fans. And both sides have valid points. But here's what's making it worse: the lack of transparency from the organization, the vague answers, the sense that there's a disconnect between what they're saying publicly and what's actually happening. Because if the coaching staff came out and said, "Look, here's exactly why we're not playing Shedeur yet," Here's the specific things he needs to improve. Here's the timeline we're working with. Here's the plan. If they did that, at least fans would understand. They might not like it, but they'd understand. Instead, it's been this constant stream of non-answers. We're taking it week by week. We're evaluating the situation. We'll make the decision that's best for the team. And that ambiguity breeds frustration. It breeds conspiracy theories. It breeds the exact kind of uncomfortable speculation we're seeing right now. Let's get back to Tomlin for a second, because his reaction is important for a specific reason. He's one of the most respected voices in football. This is a coach who's been in the league for decades, who's developed quarterbacks, who's navigated organizational politics, who understands the game at a level most people never will. When somebody like that hears about a situation and reacts the way he did, it carries weight. It's not just some hot take artist on TV trying to generate clicks. It's not some former player with an axe to grind. It's Mike Tomlin, a guy who doesn't traffic in BS, a guy who usually stays above the fray. And his reaction suggested he's aware of what's happening in Cleveland with Shedeur. And whatever he knows or suspects, it's enough to make him react visibly when the topic comes up. Now, does that prove anything? No, of course not. But does it suggest that people inside the league, people who know things we don't, are uncomfortable with what they're seeing in Cleveland? Yeah, it does. And that matters. Because if the perception among coaches and executives around the league is that Cleveland is mishandling their young quarterback, that affects everything. It affects future free agents' willingness to sign there. It affects how other organizations view the Browns' front office. It affects Shedeur's long-term development and confidence. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is playing out on a national stage with everybody watching. Here's what makes this whole situation so volatile. The pressure is only increasing. Every week that goes by with the veterans struggling and Shedeur on the bench, the questions get louder. The scrutiny intensifies. The media attention grows. And at some point, the Browns are going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to either commit to playing Shedeur or commit to the veteran for the rest of the season. They can't keep straddling the fence forever. But here's the problem. No matter what they do now, it's going to look bad. If they finally play Shedeur and he struggles, people are going to say they waited too long and put him in an impossible situation. If they play him and he does well, people are going to ask why the hell he wasn't playing earlier. If they stick with the veteran, they're essentially admitting they don't believe in the guy they drafted to be their future. There's no clean way out of this. The situation has become so messy, so complicated, so loaded with baggage that almost any decision is going to generate criticism. And that's what happens when you don't have a clear, coherent plan from the beginning. When you waffle. When you give mixed messages. When you let a situation spiral instead of controlling it. So let's ask the questions that a lot of people are thinking, but maybe not saying out loud. Is there something about Shedeur specifically that's making the Browns hesitant to play him? Something beyond just football ability? Is there organizational dysfunction that's preventing them from making the obvious move? Is there pressure from ownership or the front office that's tying the coach's hands? Are they concerned about what it would look like if Shedeur plays and succeeds, because it would expose how bad their decision-making has been up to this point? Are they worried about the media circus that comes with Coach Prime's son playing quarterback in the NFL? I don't know the answers to these questions. Nobody outside that building does. But the fact that these questions exist, the fact that they're being asked by fans and media, and apparently people inside the league like Mike Tomlin, that tells you something. It tells you this isn't a normal quarterback development situation. It tells you there's more going on than what we're seeing on the surface. And until the Browns provide some real transparency, some actual answers, these questions are going to keep swirling. The thing is, we don't know how this story ends. We're still in the middle of it. Shedeur could get his chance and light it up. could prove all the doubters wrong and show he's everything the Browns hoped he'd be. Or he could struggle, could show that maybe the coaches were right to be cautious, could reveal that he needs more development time. Or, and this is the scenario a lot of people are worried about, he could get thrown into a situation so dysfunctional, so lacking in support, that he never really gets a fair shot to succeed. And that last scenario is what keeps people up at night. Because we've seen it before. We've seen talented young quarterbacks get destroyed by bad organizations. We've seen potential wasted because a team couldn't get out of its own way. And right now, based on what we're seeing in Cleveland, based on how this situation has been handled, based on Mike Tomlin's reaction, and the media's response, and the growing sense that something's not right, there's a real fear that Shedeur could become another cautionary tale, then another what if, another wasted talent because the organization failed him. Step back for a second and think about what this represents for the league as a whole. Shedeur Sanders isn't just any rookie quarterback. He's one of the most scrutinized, most analyzed, most talked about prospects in recent memory. His success or failure is going to be dissected by everybody. It's going to be used as evidence in debates about quarterback development, about organizational competence, about legacy players and pressure and expectations. And right now, the way Cleveland is handling this situation is sending a message to every young quarterback in the league, every prospect considering where they want to play, every agent advising their clients. The message is, even if a team drafts you high, even if they say you're the future, even if you do everything right, that doesn't guarantee you'll get a fair opportunity. And that's problematic. That's the kind of thing that erodes trust between players and organizations. That makes guys want to force their way to certain teams and avoid others. The NFL is a business, sure, but it's also built on the idea that if you're good enough, if you work hard enough, you'll get your chance. And when situations like this one make people question whether that's actually true, it damages the foundation of the whole thing. Coming back to where we started, Mike Tomlin's reaction matters because it's a window into how people inside the league view this situation. Coaches talk to each other. They share information. They know what's happening in other organizations, even if they don't say it publicly. And when a coach of Tomlin's caliber reacts the way he did, it suggests that the coaching community is aware of what's going on in Cleveland. And they're not impressed. That's damaging for the Browns in ways that go beyond just this season. It affects their reputation. It affects their ability to hire top coaching candidates in the future. It affects how they're viewed by their peers. Because in the NFL, reputation matters. And right now, based on how this Shedeur situation is playing out, Cleveland's reputation is taking a hit. What happens next? The reality is, nobody knows what happens next. This situation is fluid. It's ongoing. It could change tomorrow. Maybe the Browns finally commit to playing Shedeur and everything works out. Maybe the veteran gets injured and the decision gets made for them. Maybe there's a coaching change that resets everything. Or maybe this drags on. Maybe Shedeur sits for the rest of the season while the team struggles. Maybe we spend the entire offseason debating whether he ever really got a fair shot. The point is, we're in the middle of the story, and the ending hasn't been written yet. But what we do know is that Mike Tomlin's reaction confirmed what a lot of people were already thinking. Something about this situation doesn't feel right. And until the Browns address that, until they provide real answers about their plan for Shedeur, until they show that they're committed to developing him the right way, the questions are going to keep coming. The speculation is going to continue. And every week that goes by is another week where one of the most talented young quarterbacks in football is watching from the sideline, waiting for an opportunity that maybe should have already come. Look, at the end of the day, we're all on the outside looking in. We don't know what conversations are happening in meeting rooms. We don't know what the coaches see in practice. We don't know what the organizational dynamics are. But we can see patterns. We can observe behavior. We can listen when people like Mike Tomlin react in ways that suggest they know something we don't. And what we're seeing right now, what all these pieces of evidence are pointing to, is a situation that's not being handled well. Whether that's because of incompetence, or politics, or fear, or something else entirely, we don't know. But what we do know is that Shedeur Sanders deserves better. He deserves a clear plan. He deserves honest communication. He deserves a fair opportunity to show what he can do. And right now, based on everything we're seeing, it's not clear he's getting any of those things. And that's what makes Mike Tomlin's reaction so powerful, because it validates what so many people have been feeling. It confirms that this isn't just fans being impatient or media creating drama. It's a real issue that people inside the league recognize. So here we are, watching this situation unfold in real time. Watching a talented young quarterback sit on the bench while questions swirl about why he's not playing. Watching a respected coach react in a way that suggests there's more to this story than what we're being told. And we don't have answers. We have questions, we have suspicions, we have uncomfortable feelings about what we're seeing, but we don't have resolution. We don't have clarity. We don't have an ending. Because this story isn't over. It's still being written. And where it goes from here, that's anybody's guess. All we can do is watch and ask questions and hope that whatever's happening behind the scenes in Cleveland, it doesn't cost Shedeur Sanders the career he's worked his entire life to build. Because that would be the real tragedy. Not that a team made some questionable decisions, but that a talented player never got the chance to reach his potential because the organization failed him. And based on Mike Tomlin's reaction, based on everything we've seen, based on how this whole situation has played out, that's the outcome a lot of people are starting to fear.